Well, I just noticed we're at the castle ruins now, the Weoley Castle ruins, and there's a gate open. Well, there's no notice on there either. Weoley Castle viewing platform open every day. There we go. Let's have a look. The gate's open. Not normally. Going this part. Yeah. Nice closer look at the castle ruins here. And this part, can't no access actually inside, but this bit you can have a look. I remember going there when I was a kid actually. I was at school. Yeah, it used to be a castle, and this is the ruins. Yeah, I went here in primary school. I can remember we did some work on the history of it and everything. You can go in this part, but obviously no authorised entry behind there. Wow. Look at that. Nice view of the ruins. Not really much here, apart from there's been a lot of history about the place. All years ago, that would have been centuries ago, that would have been a big castle stood there. Wow. Wow, interesting to see, isn't it? We've got a few notice it over. That's a bit about the wildlife in there. Wildlife Weoley Castle. There's a bit of the history there. Welcome to Weoley Castle. A quick history. As you can see, Weoley Castle Farm there. Postcards from the 1930s. The origins of the castle, Weoley Castle, lie in Anglo-Saxon period. The word lair or lay in the Old English refers to a woodland clearing, and Weoley or Weoley indicates specifically to a willow clearing. Records show that Elwood was a Saxon that held the manor of Northfield before the Norman invasion of 1066. Archaeological evidence suggests that originally Weoley Castle was a simple timber building within a protective ditch and wooden fencing. However, what you see today mostly dates from the 1270s when the Lord of Dudley, Waddy Summary II, was granted a licence to congratulate, that is, to build and strengthen the castle in stone. Despite its name, Weoley Castle was in fact a medieval moated manor house. It came to be called a castle because it had all the features of one: a wide moat, drawbridge, turrets and arrow slits. However, Weoley stood at the bottom of a valley, meaning it did not have the defensive position needed by a castle. In the Middle Ages, Weoley was at the heart of a deer park which covered 1,000 acres. There were fields, small holdings and a mill close by. It was a hub of activity involving servants in the house of villains working on the land. Weoley provided employment for many people. In fact, records show that up to 70 tenants lived and worked on the manor. Tenants had to pay the Lord of Dudley a percentage of their crop as it went for their land. Tenants were also required to work several days on the Lord's land each year, happy with jobs such as ploughing, sowing and harvesting. Twice a year, the manorial court was held at Weoley Castle in a great hall. The Lord heard local disputes between neighbours and punished those found guilty of poaching, illegal brewing and common assault. As time went on, Weoley fell into disrepair, and by the mid-17th century it was described as ruined castle. The stone walls of Weoley were being used as a source of building material. Castle Farm and Stonehouse Farm were built in the late 17th century using stone from the castle walls. Other local constructions also used Weoley stone, including the Weoley Regis Church and the Dudley Canal build. In the 1930s, the deer park disappeared when the Birmingham Corporation built the Weoley housing estate over, yeah, that's how old the square is, 90 years, odd years, over its acres, keeping the site of the castle as the green heart of the development. There have been two periods of archaeology excavation, one in the 30s and one in the 50s. Today, despite its loss of substance over the years, the Weoley Castle ruins have national significance and are registered as a scheduled ancient monument. This gives the ruins the same level of protection as Stonehenge. Yes, just as important as Stonehenge. This site is cared for by Birmingham Museums Trust. More information about this or any other sites, please visit birminghammuseums.org.uk. There we go. And a quick look, wide angle look. We also have another one, what you can see. Oh, you can see a drawing of what it used to look like there. Taking a imaginative leap back to 1424, from where you stood you would have been facing the west wall of Weoley Castle. The grass pathway entrance to the ruins would not have existed. Instead, there would have been a high stone wall. Instead, there would have been surrounded by a wider deep moat. On the other side of the wall, there would have been a large courtyard, bustling with people. Courtyard was surrounded by many different buildings and rooms, all belonging to the Lord of Dudley. Upon arriving at Weoley Castle, visitors like you would have crossed at an impressive drawbridge over the water-filled moat and walked under the barbican to enter the courtyard. And the first building in front of you was the stable block. Here you would have dismounted your horse and handed it to the stable boys to look after. Past the stable was the chapel. You can still see the remains of the altar base in the ground today. During the 1930s excavation, decorated floor tiles and stained window glass were found in this area too. Beyond the chapel, in the far corner of the castle, is the solar area. It was made up of several rooms, including the great chamber, nursery and garderobe, and medieval toilet. It is thought that these were the private apartments of lords of the manor. At the far side of Weoley Castle was the Great Hall. It was 64 feet long and 36 feet wide. This is where important visitors would have been entertained in style. On days of celebration, there would have been music and dancing. In here, a piece of a bagpipe was found in this room. It was also the setting for the manorial court, where the lord of the manor would rule over local disputes and punish those found guilty. Right next to the Great Hall in the southeast corner of the castle was the kitchen complex with its pantry, buttery and larder. Outside the kitchen in the courtyard there was a little herb garden which would have been handy for the cook. Moving back towards where you are stood along the south wall there was a guest house, bakehouse, brewhouse and granary. It is important to remember that between the 13th and 15th centuries these buildings inside the Weoley's walls were by no means the whole of the castle complex. Outside the castle walls and beyond the moat was the outer court. These included more stables, a dairy and a watermill. It was also where the villain's tenants lived and worked. There we go. Bit about history there. Quick pan round. And beyond here it says no unauthorized entry. In other words, not allowed. There's a quick one round there. There we go. I hope you enjoyed that history lesson. Look at the ruins from this public arena where you can stand. And I believe that's like the must be the big women's major office or even classroom maybe over there. Oh, yeah. Anyway, there we go. Thank you for watching.